David Brooks. Boop, boop, boop.
It is Friday morning, not quite 24 hours since the Mueller report was released to the public. Redacted.
Redacted.
I have been seeing columns from some people who I presume are on the right, who say that the liberal media should apologize and admit it was wrong. He is cleared. And the report does say, here's a quote from the report. Ultimately, the investigation did not establish that the campaign coordinated or conspired with the Russian government in its election interference activity.
Collusion.
So anybody who said the report would establish that coordination and conspiracy, yeah, that person was wrong.
Liar, liar, liberal pants on fire.
The report did, however, find an awful lot going wrong, and it decided that the legal apparatus couldn't bring charges of obstruction of justice, that was pretty much up to Congress to do. Here's another quote. The conclusion that Congress may apply the obstruction laws to the president's corrupt exercise of the powers of office accords with our constitutional system of checks and balances and the principle that no person is above the law. So
it's such political doublespeak. But
well, it's like it's not up to the legal system to bring charges against the president, at least at this level of severity. This is something that Congress should
has to do.
Should take over. But what does David Brooks say about the whole thing?
I hope it's the last time he says something about it. I'm so tired of the Mueller report.
The Muelling report?
The Muelling.
Bitching and Muelling?
Bitching and the horsey report. The equine report. Yeah.
Here's what he says. The Mueller report is like a legal version of a thriller movie in which three malevolent forces are attacking a city all at once. Everybody's wondering if the three attackers are working together. The report concludes that they weren't, but that doesn't make the situation any less scary or the threat any less real. Well, what were the three?
Russia.
You think Russia's one of them?
Yep. Trump's
one of them.
And the media.
The first force is Donald Trump. Ding! We have a winner.
Ding, ding.
You didn't say that. Who represents a threat to the American system of government. Centuries ago, our founders created a system of laws and not men.
Ha! Or women, or people of color. None of those. Or animals.
Or beavers. Or raccoons.
Oh, there's a dead raccoon. I saw it up here.
It's a system of laws, not geese.
Not laws. We shall not be governed by geese.
Or fish crows.
One goose under all geese.
In our system of government, there are procedures in place based on certain values. Impartiality, respect for institution, the idea that a public office is a public trust, not a private bauble.
Bubble.
When Trump appears in the Mueller report, he is often running roughshod over these systems and violating these values. He asks his lawyer to hamper an investigation. He asks his FBI director to take the heat off of his allies. He tries to get the relevant investigators fired. I don't know if his actions meet the legal standard of obstruction of justice, but they certainly meet the common sense standard of interference with justice. The second force is Russia! Ding! We have a winner. If
Two
Trump
out of three, then I get the voice from the guy on Motel 6, right? Wait, don't ask me. I mean, 2 out of 3 is enough to get...
That's Tom Bodett, but it's somebody else. Carl somebody.
Wrong and then wrong again. So I just lost my chance for that recording.
Negative points for that. You are now down below.
Yeah.
The second force is Russia. If Trump is a threat to the institutional infrastructure, the Russians are a threat to our informational infrastructure. We knew this already, but it is still startling to see the fact declared so bluntly that the Russian government interfered in the 2016 election in sweeping and systematic fashion. And what exactly did they do? I mean, you know, if they're actually tampering with voting, if they're hacking our voting machines, that's a real problem, but I haven't seen any evidence of that. But if they're just if they're sneaking in Facebook ads, why is that any more pernicious than the ads that are already being run by our own people against each other?
It is a question worth pursuing at a later time.
It may not be bombing buildings or shooting at people, but if a foreign government is attacking the factual record on which democracy runs, it's still a sort of warfare.
We've been at war forever then.
Attacking the factual record. So anybody on the media that
he did it. No, he didn't. Yes, he did. Yes,
right.
He did. No, he didn't.
Right. So,
Yes, he didn't.
Lots of Americans are going public and being in social media with attacks on the factual record. The Russians are trying to undermine the information we use to converse and the trust that makes conversation possible. And they are contributing to a climate of distrust that we're doing most of the work for. The third force is Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. Ah, you didn't name that one.
Didn't get that one. I said media. It's close. Not quite.
They are a threat to our deliberative infrastructure. Any organization needs to be able to hold private conversations in order to deliberate. Do you believe that's true?
This should be private then.
Well,
Or let's WikiLeak it.
we have private conversations that we don't tape.
Oh, that's a relief.
Yeah, see? Any organization needs to be able to have private conversations. Right?
Right.
I mean, if you tell your church board that it has to have open meetings, and if people show up, then really important meetings are going to happen in the parking lot.
Don't they
People are
already?
going to, and they do.
Yeah.
Right.
For that reason.
Because people need to be able to talk to each other in a context where they just experiment with ideas.
Oh.
This is not maybe what I really think, but let me just try out what it would be like to think this way. And we need to have those private conversations to work that out.
So we're not held to
And
it.
if it gets aired, then people will say, oh, this is what they really think. Well, no, everything we think is a kind of experiment, and we're subject to learning and growing. And
It's very generous of you.
yeah. So I think it's true that any organization does need to be able to hold private conversations in order to deliberate.
I can see
Whether
the point.
it is the State Department and State Department cables or Democratic National Committee emails, WikiLeaks has violated privacy and made it harder for institutions to function. We're now in a situation in which some of the worst people on earth get to determine what gets published. The Mueller report indicates that Trump was not colluding with Russia, but it also shows that working relationships were beginning to be built through networks like Paul Manafort, Donald Trump Jr., and Roger Stone. More important, it shows that many of the Trumpists, the Russians and the WikiLeaks crowd, all understood that they were somehow adjacent actors in the same project. Well, if you're adjacent actors in the same project, that sounds like you're colluding. Although, there may be some technical meaning of collude. Collude. I would say that's the report's central importance. We are being threatened in a very distinct way. The infrastructure of the society is under threat. The procedures that shape government, the credibility of information, the privacy rules that make deliberation possible. And though the Chinese government does not play a big role here, it represents a similar sort of threat to our intellectual infrastructure.
4, China.
The Chinese.
Chinese number 4. Didn't make it to the top 3 next year for sure.
The intellectual property rights that organize innovation. Oh, so they're a threat to intellectual property rights. It is as if somebody is inserting acids into a body that eats away at the ligaments and the tendons.
David!
Now, there's a metaphor for you.
David, really?
Acid eating away our ligaments and tendons.
Where's it being inserted exactly? I mean, he used the word assets, right?
Acids. Is inserting acids.
I mean, boy, that just... Ooh.
And so our bones fall apart. Our joints don't hold.
Up the butt.
These
David.
forces are motivated by self-interest, but their common feature is an operational nihilism. Operational nihilism. They're trying to sow disorder at the foundation of society.
They, them, those people.
Well, but as I say, we've done much of it ourselves.
Oh, Robbins.
The goal is not really to convert anybody to a cause. It's to create cynicism and disruption that will open up space to grab what you want to grab.
Grab your acids.
They rig the system and then tell everybody the system is rigged. And therefore, all values are suspended. Everything is permitted.
Everything.
Is permitted.
Everything.
As I was reading the report, I thought of a podcast called Against the Rules by Michael Lewis. A recent episode jumps off from the way athletes are getting more vicious toward referees.
Oh.
But that's not just true in sport. It's true in society. In all societies, there are rules defining good conduct, and there are supposed to be impartial, honest referees that enforce those rules and make sure the game is fair. And today, across society, two things are happening. Referees are being undermined, and many are abandoning their own impartiality. Think of the Wall Street regulators, the Supreme Court, the Senate committee chairman,
Ooh, nice
even many of us in the blessed media.
Conclusion, nice.
Right. Well, you know, the Supreme Court gave up its impartiality in 2000.
Gore.
In Bush versus Gore in 2000.
Yep.
And that was before Facebook and Twitter were really big.
Yep.
So, this is a trend that's been going on for some time, and it isn't entirely a social media thing, although social media has certainly exacerbated it.
Okay. I can see. Good point.
Things begin to topple. The system more or less held this time. More or less. Did it?
Well, how would it... Well, yeah, because he didn't get fired, and there was a report, and it was made public, so it didn't topple. Next.
But that's just because people around Trump often refuse to do what he told them to do. And we happen to have Robert Mueller, who seems to be a fair referee.
A nice guy.
A nice guy.
Nice guy.
The Justice Department has not been defended from political assault. William Barr's news conference from the report's release eroded any claim to impartiality and trustworthiness. Trump doesn't seem to have any notion of loyalty to an office. All power, in his eye, is personal power. And the government is there to serve his sun god self.
Ooh, the Pharaoh god a ton.
He will continue to trample the proper systems of government. It's easy to recognize when you're attacked head-on, but the U.S. is being attacked from below, at the level of the foundations we take for granted. Or, more perhaps you should say we took for granted.
Yeah.
We used to take them for granted.
Well, did you see there was 2 robins in that tree, and then now there's a blue jay, and then there's a starling that landed and then fell. Oh, here comes the starling right at us. And
they don't care what Mueller concluded.
No, they're just looking for breakfast.
They're interested in millet, but not Mueller.
Millet's a human domestic thing, but they'll take millet too. So let's see. He blasted us because we take it for granted. He blasted
No.
before.
You ought to be there. These are foundations of our society.
So we need to take it for granted.
They ought to be able to be taken for granted.
How about the blue jay? Should we take the blue jay for granted?
Well, they are granted.
They're so pretty.
I often wonder about our use of language. Things that are granted don't have to be taken for granted.
Yeah.
But if they are granted, wouldn't recognizing the reality that they are granted be taking them for granted?
Okay, so our summary of the Mueller report. David, that was just a lot of words. That was a lot of words. Maybe a good analysis. I liked one of his points. Really, really good.
What was the one point you liked?
The referees. That we're undermining the referees. That was
right.
nice.
We're undermining them. Athletes are yelling at refs more. And the refs themselves are proving less
we give up.
reliable.
Yeah, so that was a nice thing. But I could have told him a year ago what the Mueller report would have said. I told you, I don't know how many times what it would say.
Did you say that it would conclude that the campaign, that it did not establish the campaign, it did not establish that the campaign coordinated or conspired with the Russian government?
Yep, I knew that was coming.
Yeah.
And I knew it was going to show sleazy details. I knew that too. So we
Right.
could have avoided reading all about this. We could even avoid this video right now.
We needed to know what the sleazy details were.
I know.
And that you didn't tell us.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's going to happen next? Other than we need to go work out.
Congress has to wrestle with whether to take up any of this in its investigation.
They're not going to.
It doesn't really want to.
Nope, they're not going to.
They don't really want to. Their kind of feeling is we've got a year and a half until the election.
Yep.
Let that be the trial. Let that be the court of public opinion. Let it be tried in the court of public opinion.
Yep. I think that's right.
So will Trump's approval rating take a hit in the next few days?
I don't care. What does it matter? It doesn't predict anything. I can tell you what it won't do.
Well, I think it might take a little bit of a dip and then bounce back in a few weeks or months. It'll stay. One of the things we find about Trump's approval rating is that it's flatter than any president's. There's been less variation over the 2 and almost half years that he's been president than in 2.5 years of any other presidency. It's just, it does vary. It drops down, it goes up, but the standard deviation is smaller.
What does that mean? I mean, I know what it means, but what does it mean?
It means people have made up their minds.
And they're not budging. They can't make
me
change.
There's a lot of the population that will never approve of Trump, and there's a lot of the population that will never disapprove of Trump.
So why do we spend all this time reading about it? Because
in part, Trump is so consistent. He's always being Trump, which is what some people find very disconcerting, and other people will not like it that way. And so that's why his approval rating varies only within a very small margin.
Well, on to the next event in U.S. history. On to the gym. Thank you, David, for summing that up for us.
Woohoo!
Bye!